The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, but for Eli Carter it was a battlefield. At 27, he stood at the edge of the CEO's annual gala, clutching a tray of champagne flutes, his janitor's uniform a stark contrast to the tailored suits swirling around him. Then he saw him, Lucas Reed, the man who'd stolen his heart, dancing with a woman to keep up appearances, his eyes screaming apologies across the room. Eli's pulse raced as he navigated the crowd, the clink of glasses drowning out the whispers of his own heart. He wasn't supposed to be here, not really, just a last-minute fill-in for the catering staff, a favor for a friend. But Lucas, the rising star of Pinnacle Enterprises, had begged him to come, promising a stolen moment amidst the corporate elite. Their love was a secret, hidden behind stolen glances and late-night whispers in Eli's tiny Brooklyn apartment. Being openly gay in 2015's corporate America, especially at a company like Pinnacle, was a risk neither could afford. Lucas, with his sharp jawline and ambitious dreams, was on track to become the youngest VP in the company's history. Eli, a community college dropout scraping by as a janitor, had nothing to lose except Lucas. The night felt electric, dangerous. Eli's hands trembled as he offered champagne to a group of executives, their laughter sharp and careless. He caught Lucas's eye again, a fleeting moment of warmth before Lucas's dance partner, a poised woman in a red gown, pulled him closer. Eli forced a smile, but his chest tightened. He knew the rules. Don't draw attention, don't speak unless spoken to, and above all, don't let anyone suspect. But love, as Eli was learning, didn't play by rules. "Carter!" a voice barked, slicing through the music. It was Gerald Harper, the CEO, his face a mask of disdain. At 50, Harper ruled Pinnacle with an iron fist, his conservative values as rigid as his starched collar. "What the hell are you doing here? You're not staff tonight." Eli froze, the tray wobbling. I'm covering for someone, sir," he stammered, his voice barely audible over the orchestra. Harper's eyes narrowed, scanning Eli like he was a stain on the pristine gala. "You don't belong here. Get out." The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of a guillotine. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Eli felt the room shrink, every eye on him. Then it happened. Lucas broke away from his dance partner, striding toward Eli with a fire in his eyes that made Eli's heart lurch. "Gerald, he's with me," Lucas said, his voice steady but edged with defiance. The room went silent, the kind of silence that suffocates. Harper's gaze flicked between them, a cruel smirk curling his lips. "With you?" he repeated, his tone dripping with mockery. "You mean to tell me the company's golden boy is slumming it with the janitor?" The word janitor landed like a slap. Eli's face burned, but Lucas didn't flinch. "We're together," Lucas said, stepping closer to Eli, his hand brushing Eli's arm. The touch was brief but electric, a declaration in front of a room full of wolves. The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling like wildfire. Harper's smirk vanished, replaced by a cold fury. "You're both done here," he spat. "No faggots at my gala. Get out and don't come back." Eli's world tilted. The tray slipped from his hands, champagne flutes shattering on the marble floor. Lucas grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit as security closed in. The last thing Eli saw was Harper's triumphant sneer, the crowd parting like a sea of judgment. Outside, the New York night was cold, the city's pulse indifferent to their humiliation. Lucas's hands cupped Eli's face, his breath shaky. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I didn't think. You stood up for me." Eli cut in, his voice raw. "That's enough." But it wasn't. The next day, Lucas was demoted, his VP dreams crushed. Eli was fired, his janitor's badge stripped away. Pinnacle's gossip mill churned, painting them as the scandal of the season. Lucas's colleagues shunned him, his inbox flooded with hate. Eli, used to scraping by, took it in stride, but Lucas's world was unraveling. "We'll get through this," Eli promised, holding Lucas in their cramped apartment. The city's skyline a distant taunt through the window. Weeks turned into months. Lucas took a job at a smaller firm. His ambition dimmed but not dead. Eli hustled, picking up odd jobs, cleaning offices, delivering food, anything to keep them afloat. Their love grew stronger in the shadows, but the wound of that night lingered. Eli saw it in Lucas's eyes, the guilt of dragging them both into the fire. "I'll make this right," Lucas vowed one night, his voice fierce. "I'll build something bigger than Pinnacle. For us." Eli believed him because love makes you believe in miracles. But belief alone couldn't pay the rent, and New York was merciless. One night, after a brutal double shift, Eli came home to find Lucas hunched over a laptop, his face lit by the glow of code. "What's this?" Eli asked, peering over his shoulder. "An idea," Lucas said, his eyes alight with something Eli hadn't seen since the gala. "A tech platform. Something new. Something ours." Eli didn't understand the details. Coding was Lucas's world. Not his, but he saw the spark. That spark became their lifeline. Lucas worked late into the nights, building what would become Nexus, a revolutionary app connecting freelancers to clients. Eli supported him, taking on extra shifts to cover bills. Their tiny apartment a chaos of coffee mugs and dreams. They fought, they cried, they laughed. Their love a stubborn flame refusing to die. By 2017, Nexus was gaining traction. Lucas's brilliance drew investors, and Eli's unwavering support kept them grounded. But the past wasn't done with them. A former Pinnacle colleague, now a rival, leaked their story to the press, framing Nexus as the gay app to sabotage its launch. The backlash was swift. Trolls flooded their inbox. Investors wavered. Eli felt the weight of that night at the gala all over again. But Lucas was different now. "Let them talk," he said, his voice steel. "We're not hiding anymore." They pushed forward, Nexus growing despite the hate. Eli took on a role managing community outreach, his warmth winning over clients Lucas's code couldn't reach. By 2020, Nexus was a household name, its valuation soaring. Lucas and Eli, once outcasts, were now pioneers. But Pinnacle loomed in the distance, a reminder of the night that broke them. In 2025, 10 years after the gala, Nexus acquired Pinnacle in a stunning buyout. Lucas, now CEO, walked into the same ballroom where they'd been humiliated, Eli at his side. Not as a janitor, but as co-founder. The chandeliers still glittered, but the room was theirs now. Harper, ousted and disgraced, was nowhere to be seen. Eli looked at Lucas, their hands clasped, no longer a secret. "We did it," Eli whispered, his voice thick with pride. Lucas smiled, his eyes tracing the man who'd been his anchor. "No, Eli, you did it. You believed in us when I couldn't." The crowd around them buzzed, unaware of the weight of that moment. Two men, once banned for loving each other, had returned owning the company, and their truth. Their story wasn't just a victory. It was a testament to love's power to rebuild what hate tried to destroy. The weeks following the gala were a descent into chaos. Eli woke each morning to the sound of Lucas typing furiously, his face pale, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Their Brooklyn apartment, once a haven, felt like a pressure cooker, the walls closing in with every unpaid bill and rejection email Lucas received. Eli took on a second job cleaning offices in Manhattan, his hands raw from bleach, his back aching from hours of scrubbing. He didn't complain. Lucas needed him strong, and Eli had always been the one to carry the weight when Lucas faltered. But the silence between them grew heavier. Lucas, once the charming dreamer who'd swept Eli off his feet at a coffee shop 2 years ago, was unraveling. "I ruined us," Lucas muttered one night, staring at the cracked ceiling. "I should have kept my mouth shut." Eli knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders. "You stood up for me, Lucas. For us. That's not ruin, that's courage." His voice was firm, but inside, Eli was terrified. He'd always been the optimist, the one who saw light in the darkest moments. But New York's grind was relentless, and love alone couldn't pay the electric bill. Lucas's demotion at Pinnacle had stripped him of more than a title. It had chipped away at his confidence. He took a job at a small tech startup, a far cry from the corner office he'd been promised. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, and the hours left him drained. Eli watched him shrink. The man who'd once lit up rooms now dimmed by shame and failure. But Eli saw something else in Lucas. A spark, buried but alive. One rainy evening, Eli came home soaked, his delivery bike broken from a pothole. Lucas was at the kitchen table, surrounded by empty coffee cups and a laptop screen glowing with lines of code. "What's this?" Eli asked, dropping his wet jacket on the floor. "It's something," Lucas said, his voice hesitant but alive. "A platform. Freelancers, small businesses, people like us, connecting them directly. No middleman, no corporate bullshit." His eyes met Eli's, and for the first time in months, there was hope. Eli didn't understand the tech, but he understood Lucas. He saw the fire reigniting, the man he'd fallen for coming back to life. "Tell me more," Eli said, pulling up a chair. Lucas talked for hours, his words tumbling out. APIs, user interfaces, scalability. Eli nodded, asking questions, not because he grasped it all but because Lucas needed to be heard. That night, Nexus was born, not as a company but as a dream. Lucas coded through the night, Eli bringing him coffee, rubbing his shoulders when he tensed. They were a team, their love the glue holding the fragile idea together. But dreams don't pay bills, and by spring 2016, they were behind on rent. Eli took on a third job, delivering groceries, his body screaming from exhaustion. Lucas noticed, his guilt a silent weight. "I'm dragging you down," he said one night, his voice breaking. "You're not," Eli snapped, fiercer than he meant. "We're in this together, Lucas. Don't you dare give up on me." The words hung between them, a challenge and a plea. Lucas nodded, pulling Eli into a hug, their heartbeats sinking in the quiet. By summer, Nexus had a prototype. Lucas pitched it to a local investor, a grizzled man who'd seen 100 startups fail. Eli stood in the back, still in his delivery uniform, watching Lucas shine. The investor was skeptical but intrigued. "You've got something," he said, "but you need polish and money." He offered a small seed fund, enough to keep them afloat for 6 months. Eli quit one of his jobs, pouring his energy into supporting Lucas. He learned the basics of Nexus, enough to talk to early users, freelancers, artists, people like him who'd been chewed up by the system. His warmth drew them in, their feedback sharpening Lucas's code. By late 2016, Nexus had a small but loyal user base, and whispers of its potential spread. But the past wasn't done with them. A former Pinnacle colleague, Mark Vaughn, now at a rival tech firm, caught wind of Nexus. Jealous of Lucas's comeback, he leaked their story to a tech blog, spinning it as a scandal. Pinnacle's disgraced Golden Boy builds gay app with janitor boyfriend. The headline was a gut punch. Trolls flooded Nexus's social media. Investors pulled back, and Lucas's inbox filled with hate. Eli saw the old fear in Lucas's eyes, the same fear from the gala night. "We can't let them win," Eli said, his voice steady despite the panic in his chest. "This is bigger than them, bigger than us." Lucas nodded, but the doubt lingered. They spent nights strategizing, Eli handling user complaints while Lucas debugged code. The hate was loud, but Nexus's users were louder, their reviews drowning out the trolls. By 2017, Nexus was growing, its platform a lifeline for those the corporate world had overlooked. Eli and Lucas were still scraping by, but they had something money couldn't buy: purpose. One night, as they sat on their fire escape, the city humming below, Lucas took Eli's hand. "I couldn't do this without you," he said, his voice thick. "You're my anchor." Eli smiled, leaning into him. "And you're my fire. We're unstoppable, Lucas." They were, But the road ahead was long. Pinnacle still loomed, a shadow over their success. Eli knew Lucas carried that night in his bones, a wound that hadn't healed. But as Nexus grew, so did their resolve. They weren't just building a company, they were building a legacy, one that would outshine the hate that tried to break them. By 2018, Nexus was no longer a dream, it was a force. The platform had grown from a scrappy startup to a tech darling, its user base swelling to thousands. Lucas, now 30, had traded his corporate suits for hoodies, his charisma drawing investors like moths to a flame. Eli, still the heart of their operation, spent his days talking to users, his empathy turning strangers into loyal advocates. Their Brooklyn apartment was now an office, cluttered with whiteboards and sticky notes, the air thick with ambition. But success didn't erase the past. Eli saw it in Lucas's tense shoulders, the way he flinched at mentions of Pinnacle. The gala humiliation lingered, a scar they both carried. Eli tried to keep things light, cracking jokes as they worked late, but he felt the weight too. They were outcasts turned innovators, but the world wasn't done testing them. One morning, Eli woke to find Lucas pacing, his phone clutched tightly. "What's wrong?" Eli asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Vaughn." Lucas spat, the name a curse. Mark Vaughn, their old Pinnacle nemesis, had struck again. His rival firm, Apex Solutions, had launched a smear campaign, accusing Nexus of stealing proprietary code. The claim was baseless, but the damage was real. Investors hesitated, users questioned. Lucas's hands shook as he showed Eli the article, Nexus's Shady Origins. A scandal in the making? Eli's stomach dropped, but he forced calm. "We've been through worse," he said, gripping Lucas's arm. "We'll fight this." They hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Clara who saw through Vaughn's lies. She dug into Apex's claims, proving they were fabricated, but the legal battle drained their savings. Eli took on freelance gigs again, his old delivery routes a humbling reminder of how far they'd come, and how fragile it all was. Lucas buried himself in work, coding faster, pitching harder, his desperation a quiet storm. One night, Clara called with good news. The lawsuit was dropped, Apex exposed for falsifying evidence. The victory was sweet, but it left Lucas hollow. "They'll keep coming for us," he said, staring out their window at the city's endless lights. "Pinnacle, Vaughn. They hate what we represent." "Then let's be louder," Eli said, his voice fierce. "Let's show them who we are." They doubled down. Eli organized community events, rallying Nexus's users, freelancers, dreamers, misfits like them. Lucas refined the platform, adding features that made it indispensable. By 2019, Nexus was a household name, its app downloaded millions of times. Tech blogs that once mocked them now called Lucas a visionary. Eli, though less visible, was the backbone, his name whispered in user forums as the guy who actually cares. But success brought new challenges. Investors wanted Lucas to go public, to scale Nexus into a corporate giant. Lucas resisted, fearing it would become another Pinnacle, a machine that crushed people like Eli. The tension sparked arguments, their first real fights in years. "You're turning into one of them," Eli shouted one night, his frustration boiling over. "This was supposed to be for us, not Wall Street." Lucas flinched, his face pale. "I'm trying to protect us, Eli. If we don't grow, we'll get crushed." The words hung heavy, their apartment silent except for the hum of the city. Eli walked out, needing air, his heart pounding. He wandered Brooklyn's streets, memories of the gala flashing, Lucas's hand on his arm, the crowd's judgment. He loved Lucas, but love wasn't enough if they lost their way. Hours later, Lucas found him on a park bench, the night cold around them. "I'm sorry," Lucas said, sitting close. "Nexus is ours. I won't let it become something we hate." Eli nodded, his throat tight. "We're not them, Lucas. We're better." They rebuilt their rhythm, focusing on Nexus's mission, empowering the overlooked. Eli led a campaign to onboard marginalized communities, LGBTQ freelancers, people of color, anyone the corporate world ignored. Lucas listened, his vision aligning with Eli's heart. By 2020, Nexus was more than a platform, it was a movement. But Pinnacle was struggling. Rumors swirled of layoffs, mismanagement under Harper's iron rule. Eli and Lucas heard whispers of opportunity, a chance to acquire Pinnacle's assets. The idea was audacious, impossible. Yet Lucas's eyes lit up, the same fire Eli had seen years ago. What if we bought them out? Lucas said, half joking, half serious. Eli laughed, but the seed was planted. They started planning, their nights filled with spreadsheets and dreams. Nexus was strong, but Pinnacle was a giant, its valuation still dwarfing their startup. They'd need more funding, more allies. Eli reached out to their community, rallying support, while Lucas courted investors who believed in their vision. One evening, as they pored over financials, Lucas paused, looking at Eli. You know what this means, right? If we pull this off, we're walking back into that ballroom. Eli's heart skipped. He saw it, the chandeliers, the crowd, Harper's sneer. But this time, they wouldn't be outcasts. Let's do it, Eli said, his voice steady. Let's take it all. The plan was set, but the road was treacherous. Vaughn was circling again, his firm eyeing Pinnacle's scraps. And Harper, though weakened, was still a viper, his influence deep in the corporate world. Eli and Lucas knew the fight ahead would test them. Not just their business, but their love, their resilience, their very souls. The year 2021 was a crucible. Nexus was thriving, its valuation climbing into the billions, but the dream of acquiring Pinnacle felt like chasing a mirage. Eli and Lucas worked relentlessly, their days a blur of meetings, code, and community outreach. Their Brooklyn apartment was gone, traded for a modest office in Manhattan, but the city's pulse still felt like home, a reminder of who they were and what they'd overcome. Eli, now 30, had grown into his role as Nexus's heart. He wasn't just the user guy anymore. He was a leader, his warmth and grit earning respect from employees and users alike. Lucas, at 32, was a tech titan, his name in Forbes, his vision shaping an industry. But the closer they got to Pinnacle, the more the past clawed at them. Eli saw it in Lucas's late-night pacing, the way he'd stare at old photos from the gala, his jaw tight. One morning, a bombshell dropped. Clara, their lawyer, called with news. Pinnacle was hemorrhaging money, its stock plummeting. Harper's mismanagement had driven away talent, and a string of lawsuits had crippled the company. It's vulnerable, Clara said. If you want to make a move, now's the time. Lucas's eyes lit with a dangerous gleam. We can do this, he said, his voice low but fierce. We can take them down. Eli felt a thrill and a chill. Pinnacle wasn't just a company. It was the symbol of their pain, the night that had nearly broken them. But acquiring it meant facing Harper again, and the corporate world that had spat them out. Are we ready? Eli asked, his voice quieter than he meant. Lucas took his hand, his grip firm. We've been ready since they threw us out. They assembled a team, Clara, a handful of loyal investors, and Nexus's top engineers. Eli focused on the human side, ensuring their community stayed strong while Lucas crunched numbers. The plan was bold. A hostile takeover, buying out Pinnacle's shares before Harper could rally. But Vaughn, ever the vulture, was sniffing around, his firm poised to swoop in if Nexus faltered. The first hurdle was funding. Nexus's valuation was high, but a takeover required liquid cash, billions of it. Lucas pitched to venture capitalists, his charisma masking his exhaustion. Eli watched, proud but worried, as Lucas pushed himself to the brink. One night, after a grueling pitch, Lucas collapsed on their office couch, his face pale. What if we fail? He whispered, his voice raw. What if this is all for nothing? Eli knelt beside him, brushing hair from his forehead. Then we'll still have each other. That's not nothing. Lucas smiled weakly, pulling Eli close. Their love was their strength, but it was also their vulnerability. The tech world was watching, and not everyone was cheering. A rival blog published a hit piece, dredging up the gala scandal with new venom. Can two outcasts run an empire? The article questioned their competence, their relationship a cheap headline. Eli's anger flared, but Lucas was calm. Let them talk, he said. We'll answer with results. By mid-2021, they secured a major investor, a tech billionaire who'd been an outsider himself. His backing gave them the capital to move, but the clock was ticking. Pinnacle's board was fracturing, some open to Nexus's offer, others loyal to Harper. Vaughn's firm was making counteroffers, his whispers poisoning the deal. Eli and Lucas worked around the clock, their team a tight-knit family fueled by coffee and conviction. One evening, Eli got a call from an old Pinnacle colleague, Sarah, who'd left after the gala. Harper's desperate, she said. He's spreading lies about you too, saying Nexus is unstable. But some of us were rooting for you. The words lit a fire in Eli. He organized a press conference, standing beside Lucas as they told their story. Not the scandal, but the truth. Two men who'd been kicked out for loving each other, building something better from the ashes. The response was electric. Nexus's users rallied, social media buzzing with Nexus rising. The narrative shifted, Pinnacle painted as the villain, Nexus the underdog hero. By late 2021, they had enough shares to force a vote. Harper fought dirty, leaking false financials to scare off investors, but Clara was relentless, exposing his lies. The board meeting was set for January 2022, a showdown that would decide Pinnacle's fate. Eli and Lucas prepared, their nights spent strategizing, their days rallying support. The tension was unbearable, their love the only thing keeping them sane. The night before the vote, they stood on their office balcony, the city glittering below. This is it, Lucas said, his voice steady but heavy. Tomorrow we take back what they stole. Eli looked at him, the man he'd loved through every storm. Not just Pinnacle, he said. Our dignity, our future. Lucas kissed him, the city's hum fading into the background. Tomorrow they'd walk into battle, not as victims but as victors. The gala's shadow loomed, but they were ready to face it, together. January 2022 was frigid, but the boardroom was a furnace. Eli and Lucas sat at the head of a long mahogany table, Pinnacle's board staring them down, some with curiosity, others with barely veiled contempt. Harper sat at the far end, his face a mask of rage, his suit impeccable but his eyes betraying desperation. At 62, he was a king on a crumbling throne, and Eli felt a strange pity for the man who'd once crushed them. Lucas led the charge, his presentation razor-sharp, outlining Nexus's vision for Pinnacle. A merger that would preserve jobs, innovate, and erase Harper's toxic legacy. Eli watched, proud but tense, as Lucas fielded questions with the confidence of a man who'd built an empire from nothing. Eli's role was quieter but no less crucial. Reading the room, gauging allies and enemies, his empathy a weapon in a world of egos. Harper struck first, his voice venomous. You think you can waltz in here after everything? This company is mine. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Lucas. You're still the same naive boy who thought he could flaunt his lifestyle and get away with it. The room tensed, but Lucas didn't flinch. This isn't about me, Gerald. It's about Pinnacle's future. Your time's up. Eli's heart pounded, but he spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Pinnacle's employees deserve better. Its customers deserve better. We're here to deliver that. His words landed, a few board members nodding, their loyalty to Harper wavering. The vote was close, agonizingly so. When the final tally came, Nexus had won barely. Harper's face crumpled, his reign over. He stormed out, muttering threats, but the room belonged to Lucas and Eli. Cheers erupted from their team, but Eli felt no triumph, only relief. They'd won a battle, but the war wasn't over. The merger was a beast. Integrating Pinnacle's bloated structure into Nexus's lean operation was like fitting a square peg into a round hole. Employees resisted, loyalists to Harper spreading dissent. Vaughn's firm, bitter from losing the bid, launched a new smear campaign, accusing Nexus of monopolistic practices. The FTC took notice, launching an investigation that hung over them like a storm cloud. Eli and Lucas barely slept, their days consumed by meetings, their nights by doubt. "What if we bid off more than we can chew?" Lucas asked one night, his voice small in their darkened office. Eli took his hand, their fingers intertwining. "We've been through worse. We'll figure it out." They did, slowly. Eli worked with Pinnacle's employees, listening to their fears, winning them over with honesty. Lucas streamlined operations, his vision cutting through the chaos. By 2023, the merger was stabilizing, Nexus stronger than ever. But the personal toll was heavy. Lucas's health faltered, stress etching lines into his face. Eli noticed, his heart aching as he watched the man he loved burn out. One evening, Eli dragged Lucas to a quiet diner, forcing him to eat. "You're killing yourself," Eli said, his voice breaking. "We didn't come this far for you to fall apart." Lucas looked at him, eyes tired but soft. "I'm doing this for us, Eli, for what they took from us." "I don't need a company," Eli said, leaning closer. "I need you." The words hit hard. Lucas nodded, promising to slow down, but the fire in him wouldn't quit. They pushed forward, Nexus's stock soaring, their community thriving. By 2024, the FTC cleared them, the smears fading into noise. Pinnacle was no longer Harper's. It was theirs, reshaped into something human, something good. But Harper wasn't done. Rumors reached them of his new venture, a shadow company backed by old money allies, aimed at undermining Nexus. Eli felt the old fear creep in, but Lucas was different now, harder, sharper. "Let him try," Lucas said, his voice cold. "He's nothing without Pinnacle." Eli wasn't so sure. Harper's venom had a way of lingering, and the corporate world was a snake pit. They strengthened Nexus's defenses, hiring security experts, fortifying their code. Eli focused on their people, ensuring loyalty from within. Their love, once a liability, was now their shield, their shared vision unbreakable. One night, as they stood in their office, the city's skyline a testament to their journey, Lucas turned to Eli. "When this is over, I want to marry you," he said, his voice steady. Eli's breath caught, a smile breaking through. "Took you long enough." They laughed, the tension easing, but the fight wasn't over. Harper's shadow loomed, and the gala's memory burned. They were close, so close, to rewriting their story, but the final chapter was still unwritten. By 2024, Nexus was a titan, its name synonymous with innovation and inclusion. Eli and Lucas had transformed Pinnacle's rotting husk into a beacon of progress, their platform empowering millions. But the cost was etched in their faces. Eli's laugh lines deeper, Lucas's eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. They were winning, but victory felt like a tightrope walk. Harper's new venture, Apex Rising, emerged like a ghost from their past. Backed by conservative tycoons, it targeted Nexus's market, undercutting prices and spreading rumors of instability. Harper's face was everywhere. Interviews, op-eds, painting himself as a victim of woke corporate takeovers. Eli's stomach churned every time he saw Harper's smug grin, the same grin from the gala night. Lucas was relentless, countering Apex's moves with new features, partnerships, and PR campaigns. But Eli saw the toll: Lucas's migraines, his short temper, the way he'd stare at nothing, lost in thought. "We can't keep fighting shadows," Eli said one night, rubbing Lucas's shoulders as he hunched over his laptop. "We're not," Lucas said, his voice hard. "We're ending this." Eli didn't argue. He knew Lucas's fire, knew it was what had carried them this far. But he also knew Harper's cruelty, his ability to twist the knife. They needed a plan, something bigger than defense. Eli suggested going public with their story again, but this time on their terms. A documentary, raw and honest, about their journey from outcasts to empire builders. Lucas hesitated. It's risky. They'll dig into everything. Our lives, our love. Let them, Eli said, his voice fierce. We're not hiding anymore. They hired a filmmaker, a queer artist who understood their story. The documentary, Out of the Ashes, was a gamble, exposing their vulnerabilities to the world. Eli and Lucas sat for interviews, reliving the gala, the hate, the hustle. Eli spoke of his janitor days, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Lucas admitted his fears, his guilt for dragging Eli into the fire. The footage was raw, their love laid bare. When it premiered in early 2025, the response was seismic. Social media exploded, Out of the Ashes trending globally. Nexus's users rallied, their loyalty fiercer than ever. Investors, once skeptical, poured in, drawn to the authenticity. Apex Rising faltered, its smear campaigns drowned out by the public's love for Eli and Lucas's story. But Harper didn't stop. He leaked private emails from Lucas's pinnacle days, twisted to paint him as disloyal. The media frenzy was brutal, but Eli and Lucas stood firm, their team countering with transparency. Clara, their lawyer, uncovered Harper's financial ties to Apex's backers, exposing their shady dealings. The tide was turning, but the final blow was yet to come. In March 2025, Nexus's board approved the final phase of the Pinnacle acquisition, absorbing its last assets. Harper's influence was gone, his legacy erased. Apex Rising collapsed under lawsuits and bad press, its investors fleeing. Lucas and Eli stood in their office, watching the news break, a quiet victory settling over them. We did it, Eli said, his voice soft, almost disbelieving. Lucas shook his head, pulling Eli close. You did it. You kept me going. They kissed, the cities hum a distant song. The gala's memory was still there, but it no longer defined them. They'd built something bigger, something true. The documentary aired again, its final scene showing them hand in hand, the New York skyline behind them, a testament to love's resilience. But the story wasn't over. Lucas's proposal lingered, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Eli felt it in every glance, every touch. The future they'd fought for was close, but not complete. They planned a celebration, not just of the acquisition but of their journey, inviting their community, their team, their family. The night before the event, Eli found Lucas on their balcony, staring at the stars. What's next? Eli asked, leaning against him. Lucas smiled, his eyes bright. Everything. A wedding, a life, maybe a kid or two. Eli laughed, his heart full. You're getting ahead of yourself, Reed. Am I? Lucas said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple but perfect. Marry me, Eli. For real this time. Eli's breath caught, tears blurring his vision. Yes, he whispered, pulling Lucas into a kiss that felt like home. The celebration loomed, a chance to rewrite the gala's pain. They were ready not just to face the past, but to claim their future. The ballroom was alive again, but this time it was theirs. In September 2025, Eli and Lucas stood under the same chandeliers that had witnessed their humiliation a decade ago. The Pinnacle Gala was no more, replaced by Nexus's celebration of love, resilience, and triumph. The room buzzed with their community. Freelancers, employees, allies, and friends, all gathered to honor a journey that had redefined an industry. Eli, now 34, wore a tailored suit, his janitor days a distant memory. Lucas, 36, stood beside him, his eyes bright with pride. The crowd was diverse, vibrant. Queer couples dancing openly, artists mingling with tech moguls, the air thick with possibility. A banner hung above, simple but bold. Nexus, built on love. The night began with a screening of Out of the Ashes, the documentary that had changed everything. As the final scene played, Eli and Lucas hand in hand, the city behind them, the room erupted in applause. Eli felt tears prick his eyes, Lucas's hand squeezing his. They'd come so far, from outcasts to owners. Their love the cornerstone of an empire. Lucas took the stage, his voice steady but emotional. 10 years ago, we were thrown out of this room for loving each other, he said, the crowd quieting. Tonight, we stand here not just as survivors, but as builders. Nexus isn't just a company. It's a promise that no one gets left behind. Eli joined him, his heart full. This is for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong, he said, his voice carrying the weight of their journey. You do, and we'll keep fighting for you. The crowd roared, their cheers a wave of love. Eli and Lucas stepped down, mingling with guests, their hands never far apart. Sarah, their old pinnacle ally, hugged them both, tears in her eyes. You did it, she whispered. You changed everything. As the night wore on, Eli pulled Lucas to a quiet corner, the music fading behind them. This feels like a dream, Eli said, his voice soft. It's real, Lucas replied, brushing a thumb across Eli's cheek. Because of you. They danced, slow and close, the world falling away. The gala's pain was gone, replaced by a love that had conquered hate, doubt, and time. Harper was a footnote, his empire dust. Nexus was their legacy, but more than that, they were each other's. The next morning, headlines blazed, Nexus's triumph, a love story for the ages. The world saw them not as scandals but as heroes. Eli and Lucas planned their wedding, a small affair in Brooklyn, where it all began. They talked of the future, a family, new ventures, a life built on their terms. As they stood on their balcony, the city theirs in a way it never had been, Eli looked at Lucas. We're free, he said, the words a revelation. Lucas smiled, pulling him close. We always were. We just had to prove it. Their story wasn't just a victory. It was a beacon, a reminder that love, when fierce and true, could move mountains. From a janitor and a dreamer to co-founders and fiancés, Eli and Lucas had rewritten their ending, and the world would never forget it.